All right, let's get right into it. We're going to unpack the incredible story of how 13 colonies, really pushed to their absolute limits, decided to take on a global superpower. And in doing so, they forged a brand new nation, one built on these radical new ideas of freedom, identity, and the right to rule yourself.
If there's one phrase you remember about the American Revolution, it's probably this one. And you know what? There's a really good reason for that. This wasn't just some catchy slogan. It was the powerful central idea that lit the match and sparked the entire world-changing conflict.
So how do we get to that point? Well, the road to war wasn't some sudden event. It was more of a slow burn, a series of decisions made thousands of miles away in London that, little by little, pushed these American colonists to their breaking point. Really, it all started with money. See, Britain was deep in debt after the super expensive French and Indian War. So to get its finances back in order, Parliament looked across the ocean to the colonies. They started imposing all these new taxes on sugar, legal papers, even tea. Now, from London's point of view, this was just sensible accounting. But for the colonists, it felt like a total betrayal. Because, you see, for them, it wasn't really about the money itself. The real issue, the thing that made them so angry, was this fundamental principle. They believed it was an essential right of an Englishman that you could not be taxed by a government where you had no voice, no one elected to represent your interests. And that simmering anger, it didn't take long to boil over into actual violence. In 1770, you have the Boston Massacre. Just a few years later, the Boston Tea Party shows that this isn't just random anger anymore. It's organized defiance. And then, finally, in 1775, at Lexington and Concord, well, the talking was over. The shot heard round the world was fired. The war had begun.
Okay, so now that blood has been shed, everything changes. This isn't just a tax rebellion anymore. It has morphed into something so much bigger. A full-blown fight to create a new, independent country. But think about that for a second. How do you go from protests and boycotts to a unified movement to literally build a country from the ground up? What was that final push that made them take the lead? Well, that answer came from a group called the Second Continental Congress. In the summer of 1776, after about a year of fighting, the leaders from the colonies made a decision that would change history. They decided to formally and very publicly sever all ties with Great Britain. For good. Penned by Thomas Jefferson, the Declaration of Independence was so much more than just a breakup letter. It was a mission statement for an entirely new way of thinking. This idea that everyone is created equal, that governments get their power from the people they govern. I mean, in the 1700s, this wasn't just radical, it was absolutely world-changing. And this is the date we all know, July 4th, 1776. This is the official moment, the birthday when the 13 colonies declared to the world that they were now free and independent states. The United States of America existed as an idea, but making it a reality on the battlefield, that was a whole other story. Right, so declaring you're free is one thing. Actually winning a war against the most powerful military on the planet to prove it, that's a much bigger challenge. And believe me, those early years of the war were incredibly tough, just full of hardship and desperate retreats. I mean, on paper, this was a complete mismatch. You had the British Army, this professional, well-oiled, perfectly equipped machine. And then you had the Continental Army, led by George Washington, which was basically a scrappy bunch of farmers and shopkeepers. But they had one huge advantage you couldn't count. They were fighting for their homes, for an idea they believed in. And that belief was tested to its absolute limit during the horrific winter at Valley Forge. I mean, Washington's army was just devastated by freezing cold, starvation, and disease. It was Washington's incredible leadership and the sheer grit of his soldiers that somehow held the whole revolution together and kept it from collapsing right there in the snow. And then, when things seemed their bleakest, a miracle happened. In 1777, up in New York, the Continental Army pulls off this stunning, unbelievable victory at the Battle of Saratoga. And this wasn't just another win. This was proof. Proof that this ragtag army could actually stand up to and beat the British. And that victory was enough to convince France, Britain's old enemy, to officially jump into the war on the American side. All of a sudden, the colonists had money, trained French soldiers, and, crucially, a powerful navy. This was the game changer they had been praying for. So with France now in their corner, the tide of the war turns for good. The stage is officially set for the final showdown, the one battle that would lock in the victory and create a legacy that lasts to this day.
That final battle happened at Yorktown, Virginia in 1781. It was this brilliant strategic masterpiece. The American and French armies trapped the main British army on land, while the French Navy blocked any escape by sea. For 3 straight weeks, they bombarded the British forces. They had nowhere to go.
And that was it. The British General Cornwallis was forced to surrender his entire army. While a few small skirmishes continued, everyone knew the surrender at Yorktown was the killer blow. America had won its independence. Of course, it took another 2 years to sort out all the paperwork, but in 1783, with the signing of the Treaty of Paris, Great Britain formally recognized the United States as a free and sovereign nation. The impossible had actually happened. A colony had become a country.
But the story doesn't stop there, not by a long shot. The American Revolution sent shockwaves all around the world. These ideas of freedom, equality, and a government by the people, well, they directly inspired the French Revolution, independence movements all across Latin America, and so many other fights for liberty.
Which kind of brings us right back to the here and now. The ideals that were forged in battle almost 250 years ago are still incredibly alive today. They're at the heart of debates and movements for freedom all over the globe. So I guess the real question for all of us is, how does this old fight for independence still echo in our world today?